Over at the Three Barn Studios, it's July 17th, and I am joined by Susan Marshall, and this is the first episode of From Oconomowoc to You, a podcast really dedicated to real conversation, real talk with real people. There's a ton, as everybody who's watching this knows, different podcast styles, long format, short format. We're looking to bring to you about 45 minutes of good conversation on different topics with people that have really interesting backgrounds. And I'm really excited to introduce you to Susan Marshall. Susan, you've been in Oconomowoc for a while.
20 years.
20 years. You've been very involved.
I thought when I got here, I'd be here 2, maybe 3. It's 20 years, Lou.
Time flies.
It's been great. It's been fabulous.
Well, in the 20 years, You've really done a lot in the community and the surrounding area. You've made a great name for yourself.
Thank you.
And
I appreciate hearing that.
Yeah.
Right?
It's all good. Yeah. Maybe if you could just let people know a little bit about your background who might not have known what you have done in the community, what you do in a professional standpoint.
Yeah, it's like, holy smokes, where do I start?
Yeah, right. And go.
No, actually, my entire working life has been dedicated to helping people grow. You and I talk about that all the time. The big umbrella is leadership development. But the Backbone Institute, which is the formal entity that I founded 2015, 16, maybe. It was previous, I'd been executive advisor. And I was doing everything from strategic planning to marketing planning to coaching, executive coaching. But the leadership was always where I was drawn. So as I founded the Backbone Institute, we started thinking about what are the critical elements of Backbone, right? Competence, confidence, and risk-taking. And it was hilarious when I first started talking about this. I was at a techie conference, and I said those 3 things: competence, confidence, risk-taking. Guy pulls me out of the break and he goes, "You can't use that word." Which word? He said, risk. I said, tell me why.
Yeah.
He said, it scares people. I said, that's pretty much the purpose of doing this. What's to be scared of, right? If we set something out there that we want to do, it's a risk, right? Call it a goal, whatever you want to call it. But once we have that in mind, we can back up and say, what do I need to get good at? The competence piece to elevate my confidence to go after that. And it's an iterative learning thing. The more we learn, the more we grow, the more confident we get, to the point where, in my crazy way of thinking, we should, if we're going to continue to work on this throughout our lives, be able to go anywhere, talk to anyone about anything.
Yeah. And everybody has their own style in that.
Yes, sir.
And I really appreciate your style because it reflects something that is kind of dear to me, in that you have a quiet confidence. There's different ways that people can portray confidence. Yeah. Some are very robust.
Awesome. Just, you know what? And if you could only be like me, you could be awesome too. Stop people.
Right. And then there's the confidence of, I know that I can hold my own.
Precisely. And I know about this much when there's a whole bunch of other stuff to know. That, when we think about it, our knowledge is growing. Our knowledge, available data, available information is growing ridiculously every second of every hour of every day. So people who like to kind of stand up and say, you know everything or even most, do tell. Please share.
It's interesting because those are the type of people I don't understand, because life has humbled me, like this morning, this afternoon, to humble me again.
Well, it happens.
And if you're not putting yourself in positions to challenge that, you're like, you never want to be the smartest person in the room. And there's a lot of people who thrive on the perception of being the smartest person.
You know, and it's interesting, that whole notion of being the smartest person in the room. In the leadership world, which is where I spend my time, sometimes you really need to be the smartest person in the room because people need to follow someone.
Yeah. Well, that's the confidence part, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And if confidence is divorced from competence, now we're in trouble. So that's been the work. I've been involved with the Waukesha County Business Alliance. Actually was a facilitator for Leadership Waukesha County for years. My leadership background and training goes way back to 2000, early 2000s, after I had met Noel Tishy at the University of Michigan. I think you know this story. And I was fortunate to be on the ground for the building of the New York City Leadership Academy. Mayor Bloomberg had just taken over the schools and said, we are going to teach principals, administrators, and high school leaders the skills of transformational leadership. It was awesome. And you talk about everybody came from a different place. New York City is the melting pot of the world. You get into public education. I saw things I didn't know were real.
Sure. Tell me about that. In a good way, in a bad way?
Well, all kinds of ways. Yeah. But the one that really stuck with me was we heard a story of a 7-year-old child who had pulled a switchblade on a teacher. And I'm, what? How? Who? Worse? The mother who came in to have the conversation with the school people sided with the daughter. And I said then, and this is 2002-ish, I was talking with somebody afterwards and I said, I don't get that. She said, what you probably don't understand is that child at age 7, that may have been the very first bonding experience the child had with mom. I had to think about that and I thought, you know what? It's probably true. And how sad that is. Yeah. But you know what? We can be sad about a lot of things, but reality is reality.
That also plays into accountability, both on the leadership side in corporate America, as well as in the family.
Every day.
Yeah, just...
Own your stuff.
Yeah.
Own your stuff. So I have 2 daughters, and all the while they were growing up, do you know the Far Side cartoons? The one, it's School for the Gifted, Midvale School for the Gifted. And the cartoon is a series of stairs leading up to the high school door. And the door says pull, and the kid's doing this.
Yeah.
And it's on the fridge, and anytime any of us did something dumb, we're like, School for the Gifted. It made us laugh.
Right.
And it made us realize, you know what? Nobody's perfect.
And because nobody's perfect, everybody is striving to be better, right? Hopefully. That's a thought.
Accountability, confidence, humility has to be a part of this. Again, that nobody can know everything. I'm excited to live at this particular time because there's so much information. Nobody can know everything. 50 years ago, people could know pretty much of everything and be an expert.
Well, the world was smaller, bigger. Actually, you know, the world was in the room. Right. Now the world is truly global, and it's overwhelming. I am also excited about being alive at this time. There is more opportunity today as we sit here than there has ever been because of the AI and the robotics and the next level things that we don't yet know. And I can only imagine, back before the Industrial Revolution and all that, the farmers sitting around going, "There's no way they're taking my horse." Right.
Well, and imagine the life before the printing press. Right? Yeah. And now it's constant. And I think as human beings, we are challenged to try to keep up. We can't. But we're constantly separating wheat from chaff. What's information and what's noise, right? What's useful and what's just stop.
So I think that's a really good point to talk about what the overall theme of what I like to communicate to those who are watching, which is the art of conversation.
Absolutely.
And I would say there's many ways of communicating, right? And conversation is one, debate is another, visually, audio.
Right.
And it's my take that over the last few years, specifically, conversation has been challenged. People tend to provide their position as a way to start what could be a conversation, and then it becomes defensive. And then it becomes a right and wrong. And the conversation isn't always left with, "I'll see you next Tuesday," which used to be. It used to be, "Hey, let's just chat, and if you have a position on one thing and I have a different position, it's just part of the conversation."
Right.
And then we move on. So I'd love for that to kind of be part of what we are introducing to those who are talking. So as you move through your day, you can challenge yourself. Am I being a conversationalist or am I being a debater? There's a place and time for each one of those.
Absolutely. And I think we've lost the skill of debate, by the way.
Yeah.
I was just shouting match.
Yeah.
And it's fascinating to watch all of this. I love to learn. Strengths finder stuff.
Yeah.
Number one strength is learner. I used to think that was really boring, but my goodness, there's so much to learn. So anytime I have a conversation with somebody who's very different than I am, I'm curious. I want to hear what the world looks like from behind your eyeballs. Knowing your experiences growing up and in the workforce and in the community, in the family and whatever, is different than mine. Because when I can learn that, my knowledge grows. I don't lose what I already know.
Right.
I gain more. But, and I love the way you kind of said it, like people take a position. If I have to take a position and defend myself against you, number one, I don't learn anything. Number two, I'm constantly tense. I'm anxious. I'm fearful. That doesn't make for good conversation. And I teach myself that you're scary.
Yeah. Would you agree that in those more tense situations of debate, you're not listening to digest? You're listening as a pause to your next statement.
And sometimes we don't even listen for a pause. We just jump on it. I used to love, well, first of all, when I was growing up, we had Thanksgiving at my aunt, no, first my grandmother's, then my aunt. And it was a screen fest, Lou. And it was always about politics. And I thought it was hysterical. I loved it. Several of my siblings were traumatized by the volume, by the speed, by just what they thought as just tremendous animosity. It was sport. So that's how I grew up. But there are people who are put together with very different tendencies, personalities, temperaments, that is absolutely horrible. So I used to love watching the pro-con TV shows and all this kind of thing. I can't watch them anymore. Because there's no conversation. It's shouting matches, it's puffing up, and it's attacking rather than listening and trying to learn.
Yeah. It's disappointing is probably not a strong enough word, but it is challenging to change that when you get into a rut of that becomes the game I like to play. I think, though, the game that has been played over the years, specifically the last 5 years, there's a fatigue associated with it.
No doubt. Absolutely.
And people are like, how do we get back to where we were? So
there is no going back to where we were. So let's establish that, because the world has changed.
Okay.
Everything is, the equipment that we're using,
yeah.
Where was this 5-10 years ago, right? We can do a whole lot more now because we have greater information, we have more tools, all this. So going back, and this is sort of a nostalgic desire people have because it seemed better. It seemed quieter. It seemed nicer. I'm not so sure it was.
I think there's also a perception that simpler is a desire for people again, because there's so much noise. You're like, I don't know what to believe, where the truth lies, how much of that is true and not true. Everybody becomes so passionate, and at the core, for the right reasons. I think it's, I want to make sure that my kids are in a better spot, and that I'm getting treated fairly, and that you're getting treated fairly. And to what we were talking about, it's no longer just the people in this room. It's like everybody everywhere at the same time. It has to be, and that's not realistic.
Well, and my concern, truly, Lou, is that the noise, the plethora of information we have, the inability, increasingly so, to sit and do this and simply talk to each other, combine all of those together, and we are destroying, in my estimation, the essence of humanity. That's a big statement. It covers a lot of ground. But when you see fatigue off the charts, when you see depression and suicidal thoughts and all of this, that doesn't come when people are confident, certainly, or even comfortable that who they are and how they are is okay.
Well, and, going into the Wayback Machine, when we were cave people, we'd gather by the fire.
Yeah. Oh, gosh.
And then we'd gather at the dinner table during farming.
Right.
And then we would hang out at the water tank and get some examples of what Seinfeld episode was, or,
right.
whatever they may be. And there would be that chuckle, and there'd be a connection. And then there, if you were young enough and single, it'd be like, hey, what are you doing? Yeah. Now I have a 28-year-old daughter. Swipe right, swipe left. Where am I going to meet this person? I go up to the bar. You can't have a conversation like this at a bar,
right,
or a church, or at a movie. The places of getting together to have a conversation
it's really
are
kind of
becoming
sad when you
challenging.
think about it. And the fact that we've lost the social skills involved in, talking to each other face to face. Now, we're old, right? So let's acknowledge that.
We're mature.
But I do think there is a lost art and lack of opportunity to teach people what it means to let your shoulders settle, to let your mind simply take in rather than having to assess, sort, categorize, right, wrong. We've lost our curiosity because we become so defensive. And now I'm going to speak as a marketer. True marketing is about segmentation.
Yeah.
Right? You segment your audience, you sell to that audience. When we have become so segmented and not only sold different things, but taught overtly or covertly to mistrust, to suspect, to be different from. I think there's just a whole lot of forces at work here that have encouraged us to separate, debate, and then prove that our position is the correct position.
So how do we control, alt, delete, or reset on that? Should we? Is that ship sailed and it's no longer, at least for now, the direction to re-engage? The direction is a blend of a bunch of other things. Again, going back to, I have a 28, a 24, a 20, a 17-year-old in the throes of what is harder than it should be, in my estimation, back when I remember the comic strips and those, right? The good old days. And at the end of the day, I think there's a lot of people craving the impression that is left of the good old days. Whether it's, again, Oconomowoc, my gosh, we've seen a transformation of the community over the years. The good old days, is that 7 years ago? Is that 70 years ago? Is it 150 years ago? And so, how do we re-engage in just appreciating the now?
I think we have to be curious about each other again. Every time you and I get together, we talk about different stuff. I learn stuff about you, you learn stuff about me, and that's fun. And there's no preconceived outcome that we're looking for. And I think that's part of this, is to just simply enjoy the exchange of ideas, the exchange of experiences. How many times have you asked a young person, what's your life like? What's going on behind your eyeballs? What do you think about? Pick a subject, right? And the fact that we don't do this, I've tried this experiment a couple of times, and it's kind of like, oh, wow, thanks for asking. Nobody cares what I think. I'm like, yeah, actually, a lot of people do. Again, the marketer, you're a big segment of the population. Yeah. There's a, why are you asking me that?
It's defensive.
So curiosity, it's just the pure aspect of being curious sometimes is met with suspicion, fear, and don't be hurting me.
What are you going to do with that information? Right. I mean, nowadays you can just have a conversation with somebody, your phone's going to hear it, and all of a sudden you're like, I was just talking about this trip to the Caribbean. Everything on my feed is now a vacation to the Caribbean and pictures of, so the ears to the marketer are always on.
Well, I keep that stuff away from me because, good Lord.
Yeah.
I don't need everything I say to be recorded. I just don't.
And that made life simpler. I mean, if everything was available via social media or recorded when I was younger, life would probably be different. Because it'd be like, well, here's proof that he's not as smart as he may think. Look how many times he ran into that wall.
But you know what? Just listen to how you said that, Lou. It's like, it's a what if. We don't know. And I read a piece this morning that I had to chuckle because it was 11 things boomers do that really annoy younger, whatever the millennials or Gen Z or Gen whoever. And I think just the fact that piece was written clearly by a younger writer, right, says, do we have to judge everything that happens? Can we simply not let some things be? Now, being overbearing, being, dismissive, being rude, all of those things, of course, none of us should take that. But what was one that I thought was really interesting? Oh, just calling somebody without texting them and saying, hey, I'm going to call you. It's like, I never even considered that would be offensive. I don't tend to call people much.
Sure.
But it's like, wow, we are really hyper vigilant about stuff that annoys us.
I'm laughing because communication styles and channels are a hot button with people.
Yeah.
Like,
yes.
There are some people who will only text. And if you call them, they're like, I'm not comfortable talking. Hang up and text me. Or it's just, it's weird. It's totally different than when I grew up and I came home from school. I got on the phone, on the landline, after hitting buttons and stretching the cord into my room. And
into the closet.
Exactly. Now it's conversation via gaming and via you name it, and everybody has become really particular about their means of communication. Yeah. And some people have taken offense to if you don't comply with mine, it's a problem.
Well, and it's interesting to me, thinking about the whole notion of just communication. There are many styles. There are many tools. There are many media, I guess. Okay. If it's important to me that you and I could communicate in a specific way, it's up to me to let you know that.
Sure.
Rather than having you guess wrong, and now...
You're out.
So again, but I think there's a hesitance to be clear about our expectations because that might be offensive. You know what? Life is offensive at times.
It can be, for sure. And part of what we are challenged with is maintaining a sense of grace for others. You mentioned judgment. Everybody judges. Absolutely. It is in our nature. Hey, I see this person, they look like this. I bet you their leanings are this way or that way. Couldn't, not necessarily just political, but I bet you they're an executive, or I bet you they work on the line, or I bet you whatever. And it seems to me that people take that judgment, right or wrong, and they act on that, as opposed to, cool, I'll put it over here, we'll keep going, no big deal, this person overall, a very good person, a very cool person, or whatever. And we see that in so many areas. It's like, you're not on the same page on every page, therefore there's something wrong.
Well, and it's interesting, we make up stories, whether they're true or not. But we make up stories about ourselves, about the world, about other people, about what's important, about what's not, about what's right, about what's wrong. And we don't share our stories unless we are triggered and we need somebody to know that. Yeah. That's a wild overgeneralization, of course, but it seems to me, just generally speaking, people are encouraged to be vigilant, to be judgmental. Yes, everybody hates it, but we're kind of encouraged to do that. And the word grace is one of my favorites. We don't, and it starts with self, right? If we cannot forgive an embarrassment to something, well, we're going to carry that. And when somebody offends us, in whatever way, we carry that too. Now we're just carrying a load of junk that does no good for me, for you, for any of us. But we're encouraged to do that.
Inhibits conversation.
Yeah, it does.
Because I carry all of that, my openings for discussion are really narrow.
Yeah. Also, I have a question about that, because I've been thinking about how, again, as a marketer and a communicator and a leadership person, when we segment and target in a good way, people, because we want them, we believe they will understand our point of view, or our thoughts, or our product, or our service. And the question I have is, are we becoming more and more tribal, and consequently more protective, more suspicious, more fearful?
I think it's changed. My impression is, people at their core want to be respected. If that comes along with being liked, great. People want to be part of something bigger than themselves. When you can't be honest with yourself, you can't be honest with others. And that tribal nature then becomes kind of the defensive posture. Here's my core. And at the end of the day, what is an identifier that we're liked and accepted for us? Isn't it what my kids probably have? Because they're looking at how many likes, how many views, how many things of that nature, how many people are playing with me on the video games. It's not the interpersonal exchange. It is a broader make-believe world.
I think there's a couple of thoughts. One, part of what you said is very poignant to me. When people can't be comfortable with themselves, how many people today do you know that really are?
None. It's a matter of how many people can mask it better than others.
Well, and then I think about we came from a world that is very, very different than it is today. We've had to learn, we've had to adapt, we've had to grow. I make an assumption that our young people are going to do that very same thing. The world is going to be very different. Their tools are going to be very different. But the fact is, if all they want to do is text each other, they're going to be running everything. So if they're going to run it by text, God bless. We won't be here.
Yeah. There's a grace in how you pass the baton.
No doubt.
And I
go along.
Right. Yeah. Or, I'm going to hit you over the head with it. You better, get it. And that seems to be the generational baton passing of that has historically been crack.
Right.
And the younger generations aren't that. They don't receive that well. It is a different style. That is a challenge for that we have to really address.
I totally agree, and I'm thinking now about your question too. How do we change the dynamic? I think it's dependent on each one of us as an individual to be genuinely interested in other people, regardless of the setting, regardless of the exchange, to be literally force ourselves to be curious about this human. That doesn't come naturally to most, right? Secondly, when you ask someone what they think, zip it and listen. And as you said earlier, don't listen to get your rebuttal ready. Listen to truly understand. And part of this is kind of the age-old, tell me what you heard.
Yeah.
I'm going to say something, then tell me what you heard. Because our words mean different things to different people in different contexts, right? We do a hilarious pop quiz in our workshops. Pop quiz, and of course everybody's like, blue circle. And they'll look like, what up with that? Or they'll hold up a pen, it's black, pretend it's blue. So they'll do what they do. And then my first question is, how many of you felt like this was a trick? 100% people raise their hand. Like, what have I done, right, to make you think I'm toying with you? Pop quiz. They don't like the words pop quiz. I'm like, okay, I get it. But we all know what blue is. We all know what a circle is. I have 8 different pictures of a blue circle. And that's like, okay, well, that's interesting. We're going to be creative and we're going to be different and all this kind of thing. The problem becomes when we say, okay, guys, let's go build a blue circle. And everybody goes, yeah. Which one?
Scatter.
Which one? You've got to see this all the time in your work.
Yeah.
So when I say words, there's a picture in my head that my words are describing. As the words come into your head, another picture is created. Sometimes they don't match at all, but we don't know that. We nod, and we're like, okay. And then we go do something else. Why'd you do that? Where'd that come from?
Well, you mentioned, tell me what you heard. That short question would, on topics of what we are thinking are important, should be integrated constantly. And it's not. It's assumed that you understand what I just said, because you nodded.
Right, exactly right.
And now we're setting ourselves up for potential disappointment, frustration, a variety of things. We go home and like, man, I was hurting a bunch of cats.
Well, and even betrayal.
Yeah.
So if you say something and I nod, I would not be surprised if you assume I'm part of your tribe. And my nodding is simply, I understand what you said. I may not agree.
Yeah.
But I get it. So, again, we create these stories. Sometimes they're so far from the truth, and we have no idea. We have no idea.
Well, affirmation to that is interesting, the way you said it, too. I can understand what you said. Doesn't mean I agree with it. And there's a lot of that going on in the world. You can, understand the person's point of view and not celebrate it, not agree with it, but allow them the grace to do whatever that is or proceed without feeling like you have to change it.
Right.
And that's...
So tell me a story, Lou, of somebody who just annoyed the out of you and how you made that a grace-filled event. Because I don't know how to do it. I'm in learning mode right now.
Oh, man. That's a great question. In my world, there are a lot of times where I fail at that miserably. On occasion, I'll be like, here's a learning opportunity.
Yeah.
I thought you meant this, or I communicated this and this didn't happen. How do we not do that again? Those, whether it's with one of my kids or a coworker or a peer, whatever that may be, hey, I thought we were doing this. You seem to agree that we were doing this, but it could have been an automatic response to whatever was in your head at the time that you were just continuing to nod as the conversation was going.
Maybe someplace completely different. I'm nodding because you're talking. I'm like, yeah, go on, but I'm not with you. I have no idea what. It's like, wah, wah, wah. I'm like, yeah, good. Yeah. Ooh, yeah, go on.
As a husband,
you know what? There you go.
Yeah. And
confessions. Here we go.
Yeah. And then it's a come to Jesus meeting with Lori, my wife. Why didn't you do blah? And you said blah. And sometimes I forgot. Something else came up. 99.9% of the time, those opportunities to find grace aren't met with grace. They're met with, well, because. And that almost always, 99% of the time, goes sideways.
Because we feel challenged.
Sure.
And here, and I think part of this lost art of conversation, we forget about tone of voice. We forget about speed of speaking. We forget about whether we say words with long or we're just, all of that conveys some kind of emotion, and usually it's not grace.
Usually it's not. The one thing that you missed on that is the facial expression.
Oh yeah, that too. I'm telling a story based on your face. Whoa, I have no idea what you're saying, but I'm watching your face and I'm like, oh man, I'm in trouble.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
Yep. We take input multisensory, and it's a challenge to get those all in sync. And when you give grace, that grace has to be received as well. And that's a challenge too. There's a lot of challenging relationships. From a marriage standpoint, you can be sorry for doing something, and if the person isn't willing to accept that, and it could be a legit thing. That's the 1,140th time that you said sorry for that. It's no longer, but the receiving of grace and the giving of grace is a mutual thing. And
it requires trust that is built over time. We both know how easily trust is broken and how long it takes to repair that breach.
Sometimes it's taken to the grave with the person. And the sad thing about that is the person that hurt most is the person in the grave.
And then what, right? And then you have to get to the point where you simply accept that is the reality.
Yeah.
It is done. We can continue to carry. We can continue to rewrite the story, recreate. I coulda, shoulda, woulda. It's done. And I think that too, in the art of the conversation, is just ourselves internally. We have to. I think it's important to strive to get to a place where we simply accept when something didn't go well, when perhaps we bombed, right, in however you want to describe that. It's done.
Yeah.
It's not my finest moment, but you know what? It's over. I'm going that way. That's back there. I'm going forward.
That's a lost art as well, is the ability to take the rocks out of your bag, set them aside, and keep moving.
And I think all of this is an emotional maturing that some do pretty well, and others never get comfortable enough to even attempt it. And so, again, we make up stories about our interactions, right? We tend to judge one way or another. We categorize. We say, that was a good experience. I want to repeat it. That was horrible. See that person, whoop, I'm going the other way. I got something to do. But this is how we are as human beings. And the less we really explore uncomfortable moments with each other, the less likely we are to build trust, to create understanding, and to create a willingness to hear out other points of view.
100%. I've had some conversations recently where I equate that to building muscle, right? You build muscle by tearing the muscle and then it repairs. And the more you do that, the stronger you get. And it's the same way in conversation. You go through and you learn what works and what doesn't work. The emotional maturity. There's also, I think we talked about this at some point, the forgive and forget. I'm big on forgiving, but I don't necessarily want to forget because I don't want to repeat.
Yeah, it's interesting. We have had this conversation, and I argue with myself more than any other person on the planet. And I forgive and forget. It's not forgive and or, it's not forgive or, it is forgive and forget. And it became an adage because it's important and it's true. And the reason I think forgetting has to be part of it is don't forget the lesson, but forget the hurt that person did. If you're going to forgive, you got to let it go.
Yeah.
And I think people say, I forgive, and they haven't. It's distorted.
True, 100%. Being able to truly forgive means that you have let it go, but that doesn't mean you forgot it. And those are interesting conversations that I've had with people over several years because life has been interesting over the last several years,
Right.
more so than before.
Right.
And there are some things that happen that I forgive, but I don't forget them because those are factual history.
So let me come at it a different way, Lou. I forgive, but I don't forget. What does the word forgetting in that context mean to you?
That's a great question. Just that something happened. That something, whatever that is, that's the extent of it.
How do you hold that something happened without holding the emotional residue of what was there?
That's totally taken a journey, for sure. I would say for me, personally, and again, there's a variety of things that everybody goes through that is harder to forget
Absolutely.
than others. But for me, the remembering of the factual event and being able to say, there's nothing I can do to change that. And there's nothing that I could do to change the person. I can only change my response to that.
Right.
And I think when you get to that point, then the forgive becomes the reality. It's I control me. I can't control the past or you or any of that other, but I'm not gonna live that again.
And that I'm smiling because the notion of I can only control me, intellectually we all get that. I think in everyday practice, we really would like to control others because then they can't hurt us, they can't disappoint. So it's like, let's have a conversation. Tell you what, you be quiet so you don't mess it up. I'll do this for both of us. And we live like that sometimes. And how incredibly dismissive that is. But again, I think that's not again. I really believe that is based in fear.
Yeah.
It is based in protection. And I can't control what's going to happen here. Therefore, I'm going to be very tentative.
Yeah.
What do we control?
You only control your response.
And sometimes we don't even do that very well.
Most of the time we don't, for sure. And you know, some of that for me too in certain situations has been attempts to rewrite the historical facts. And that's a challenge for me.
Well, and that's the whole, my view, and in a word, that's the justification. I did what I did. It may have been rude, it may have been wrong, it may have been whatever, but I did it because, and therefore I did that, right? And there's a defending it. And when people want to rewrite, that's when we tend to get most energetic about reminding them of the facts. And then I have to chuckle because I think about, 3 people see a car accident. All 3 of them have a different story. What are the facts? Yeah. What's going on behind our eyeballs? How did our thinking get shaped? What experiences, what people, what traumas, what joys? We don't know any of that. Sometimes we can be pretty sure for ourselves.
Sure.
But we have no idea for other people. But we make up stories.
Yeah. So I'd like to explore that a little bit because I think that's really interesting, especially, it's happened for over the last few years specifically, using the example of you have 3 people, all 3 saw the accident. 2 people, as they relive that, have different points of view and different ways to tell that story. And the third person's like, there was no accident.
Right.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Right. Yes. Do you think that's purposely provocative at times?
Oh my gosh. I don't know what that is. I know, again, and this plays into the conversation, right? Because you're like, hey, let's have a conversation about blah, blah, blah. Let's talk about that accident.
Yeah.
And they're like, what accident? And you're like, oh my gosh, I don't know what to do with that.
Right.
So
Never mind. Never mind.
Right? And then it becomes tribal, and it becomes, I'm going to find somebody that saw it in my point of view because that makes me feel better. It justifies my emotion, my thought. So from, again, conversationally and trying to figure out to re-engage in some of those levels. You get 3 people that saw the same accident, and they're all like, yeah, and I saw it, and he came and he hit that way, and they're like, oh, I saw it, you see this? And everybody's like kind of building off of that story. Right. That's good conversation, good exchange of ideas and points of view. And then when you throw that one in there, that's like, no, I didn't see that at all. I don't. Was there an accident? Did somebody get hurt?
You know what? And I think this is where, and this may be flippant, and I apologize, it's not intended. That's a moment you go, no kidding, you didn't see the accident. What did you see, right? If anything. And if there is nothing to be had there, my mind says, okay, that person is not a factor in this discussion. And I just tune out.
Yeah.
Try not to be, dismissive overtly, but it's like, okay, well, nothing to contribute, so okay. I'm not going to get all worked up about, what do you mean you didn't see that? It was right there. Do you not see the debris in the road, right? It's like, there's no point.
Right. We have that going on in the community, in society, every day on some pretty major topics. We do. And it's interesting. So I think a lot about this notion of barriers, boundaries, and boundaries by definition separate and protect. And I do think there is a human need to create boundaries. We don't need to spend a whole lot of time fortifying and strengthening and building them higher and higher and higher, which again, we're encouraged to do with people who are not like us. But there's a need for that so that we can stop assessing and judging and criticizing and defending and tearing other people apart, right? So the whole notion of boundaries is always a very interesting thing to me. And I think in a conversation, when we butt up against a boundary, do we try to get past it? Do we try to break it down? Sometimes we do. And might we be better served to recognize it and go, okay, I think we might be done with that particular aspect. Tell me what you're thinking. I'm not telling you anything. Okay. I'm always wrong. I may say that to people more often than I should. As we're having this conversation, how would you define what a conversation is?
An exchange of thoughts. Well, I think about conversation, we are sharing, and I said it earlier, what's happening behind your eyeballs? What's going on in your cranium? What dots have you put together to create a story that you are now telling about an accident, about an event, about me, about you, about us, right? And if we lose the ability to share that openly, with some grace, with some courage, now we're just going to guess. And it's an endless guessing game. And most people don't like to play guessing games because 50-50, we're wrong.
You're spot on. And the word that popped into my head was a conversation is an exploration of thoughts and ideas. And that's as simple as it is.
And what assumptions underlie that make it positive. I respect that you have a point of view. Yep. I respect you got there somehow. I respect that it is as real for you as mine is for me. So we don't need to be, sparring with each other about who's right and who's wrong. We're different.
Yeah, it's an exploration to get to know you.
And I reserve the judgment about where I end up. I
right.
like you, where I'm like, whoa, okay, don't need to do that again.
Right.
Which is fair and valid.
Yeah. But it's kind of interesting then. So, like, if you're sending somebody a text or an email or Facebook chat or whatever, a variety of channels available, and you're like, hey, let's catch up and chat or have a conversation. What would the expectation be if you got a text from me that said, are you available next week Friday to have an exploration of thoughts and ideas?
And you know me.
You'd be like, yeah.
Yeah, where, when? So, but I can absolutely appreciate that there would be a hesitance go about what?
Yeah.
What do you want from me?
Nothing.
Right?
Yeah.
See, that's it.
Yeah.
And that's what we need to get past.
Yeah.
This automatic suspicion. What? I was in a meeting last week, and one of the women that was in the group said, do you have a minute to stay and chat after the group? And I said, sure. And I was like, wonder what she wants to talk about. Did I say something? We automatically, many, not all, automatically wonder, what did I do? What did I do? So we create our own anxiety, and it had nothing to do with anything that had transpired there. It was something that had been on her mind. And it was a fabulous discussion. But we have to get past our own tendencies to protect ourselves. And I don't know that that ever goes away entirely, but I think the further down the road we get, the more confident we gain in our own ability to keep our footing, not necessarily to keep our foot out of our mouth, right? That doesn't necessarily track. But we're willing, when I say that, I'm like, that's not true. I know people who are older and will never have a new thought and everything that, it's like, never mind. I'm making up stories.
Well, I think sometimes the older you get, the less flexible you are in a variety of ways. You can't bend over to get the spoon you dropped on the floor, let alone change a point of view. And again, I think a conversation may plant a seed, but the intent of a conversation isn't to change a point of view. It's to explore and to get to know the person. And again, those are totally different things.
That just triggered. I like to think about, particularly when we've had heated discussions or they're difficult and, really uncomfortable, people think about that after they turn off the lights. That's when a lot of us sort of review what was said, what did it mean, gosh, I wish I had this differently, or what a schmuck, I'm never talking to that person again. Yeah. So there's constant review and in my hope, learning, but that's, maybe we're just building that barrier higher.
Well, it depends on what you're trying to take away from that review. I said this and the person said that and they should have said this, as opposed to...
So don't screw it up. I'll have this conversation for both of us, right?
Yeah.
That attitude.
Yeah. So I think we're probably getting to a point where I'd like to leave those who have joined us with some takeaways on the art of conversation, and hopefully they enjoyed our conversation.
Hopefully.
What would your top 3 takeaways be for having good conversation?
I think the first thing I personally like to think about and encourage others to do when you're approaching a conversation, whether it's a meeting, whether it's getting to know somebody, whether it's negotiating. Take everything you know and have experienced and believe and put it in a locker and lock it. And come open and clean to a conversation. Listen without judging, right? So that's the first thing, is suspend it's always there. You can go retrieve it at any time. But when you're genuinely interested in getting to know somebody, be open to that. Secondly is slow yourself down. You don't have to have a response. Most people are extraordinarily uncomfortable with silence, right? So if you're going to sit there, I'm going to start telling stories, or I'm going to change the subject, I'm going to be a pinball. That's not conducive to real good sharing. So that's the second one. And then the third one is really appreciate what you're hearing. Whether you agree with it or not, just appreciate the fact that this other human being is giving you what's behind their eyeballs. That's a cool gift.
Receipts. Find humor.
Absolutely. If we can no longer laugh, we're in serious trouble.
Oh, man. Amen. Well, thank you so much.
This has been fun.
It's been great. I hope people have taken away something that helps them go out and start a conversation. More and more conversation will mean a healthier and healthier community and society. Big words, big topic, but it starts with the small stuff.
Absolutely does. And thank you, Lou, for doing this work and really being open to exploring so many things. We're living in a buffet, right? And there's so much to choose from. All right, we're not great. Thank you.
Thank you.